We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including some offseason trade speculation. Today's rumors focusing on teams like the Montreal Canadiens, the Anaheim Ducks, the Minnesota Wild, and the St. Louis Blues. We also have some updates on some contract extension talks around players like Kyrou Kaprizov and Adrian Kempe. We have a variety of NHL signings today, including an interesting one in Montreal, plus some other prospects around the league, including the Red Wings signing a first-round pick from 2025. Plus, of course, it's NHL Schedule release day. We're going to take a quick peek at some of the key dates and moments that you need to pay attention to for the upcoming NHL season. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. We'll get into all the rumors and signings here in just a moment. Before we do jump into a lot of the news, I just want to acknowledge that the NHL world has lost another member of the fraternity here. The longtime NHL executive and former NHL goaltender Wayne Thomas has unfortunately passed away. Thomas appeared in 97 games for the Maple Leafs over 2 years. And you know what? He's one of the things he might be most known for would be the fact that he was the goaltender that got to pick up the win in Daryl Sittler's famous game where he picked up 10 points, which is an NHL record game in February 7th, 1976. So, of course, Thomas was also a longtime NHL executive with the Sharks as well. So certainly want to pass along our condolences. So our thoughts are with Wayne Thomas's family and friends here, of course, at this time. Now, as I mentioned, today is NHL Schedule release day, a day that many of us have been looking forward to for quite some time. Of course, you want to look at your favorite team's schedule, start making your plans. When can you see some NHL games? What are the key dates, key moments that you need to pay attention to, and all that. I do have a video that's going to be coming out here soon, probably sometime in the morning. A little bit more of a higher level overview of the schedule itself, so stay tuned for that. But we're just going to touch on a few quick details here now, just to give you some of the key main dates to look forward to. Of course, October 7th is opening night. It's going to open with a triple header. Of course, we've discussed that yesterday because the NHL released those details already, with the Blackhawks visiting the Panthers for their banner-raising night to acknowledge their second consecutive Stanley Cup, followed by the Rangers visiting the Penguins and Mike Sullivan's return to Pittsburgh. And the triple header will conclude with the Avalanche visiting the Los Angeles Kings. A few other quick dates here as well that are important. On October 11th, you're going to have all 32 teams in action, so it's going to be a very, very busy NHL schedule night. Most games this year are 7 o'clock Eastern time. The NHL has gotten away from a lot of those 7:30 starts. It seems like there's still some in there, but they've kind of gotten their way with a lot of games moved to 7 p.m. Eastern time across a lot of those cities, of course, NHL teams. October 13th is going to be the debut of Prime Monday Night Hockey for the 25-26 season. Of course, it was a pretty big hit last year in Canada through Amazon Prime. They put together a fantastic broadcast and great product, in my opinion, even better than Sportsnet. So certainly nice to see it continuing. Their debut broadcast is actually going to be a double header featuring the Red Wings versus the Leafs, followed by the late game of the St. Louis Blues visiting the Vancouver Canucks. Later into October, we got the Frozen Frenzy on the 28th. Of course, the same as the 11th when you have all 32 teams in action, except they actually take the time to stagger the games so that you have a steady stream of NHL action that you're able to watch. You can flip back and forth, and games are not going to be all starting at the same time, so that you can take in more of the NHL action. So the 20th of October will be a fun night from that regard as well. Of course, you get the Global Series in November, the 14th and 16th with the Penguins and the Predators. The Winter Classic, of course, January 2nd in Miami, Rangers and Panthers. February 1's the Stadium Series game in Tampa against the Boston Bruins. Of course, the Olympic break is February 6th to the 24th. So you get a full 18 days there of no NHL action, which really condenses the schedule in January. Most teams are playing probably on average of about 15 games. A few other quick dates as well. You have Brad Marchand's return to Boston, October 21st. Mitch Marner's return to Toronto, January the 23rd. That's going to be a big one as well. You got a bunch of teams celebrating anniversaries and milestones this year. The Blue Jackets and Wild are celebrating their 25th anniversaries, and you've got 3 original 6 teams that are hitting their centennial year this year with the Blackhawks, Red Wings, and the New York Rangers. So that is pretty much the higher level of all the key dates. Like I said, take a look for my video on the NHL schedule released to come out in the morning with more details and kind of goes over some more dates, back-to-backs, and kind of analyzes the schedule a little bit more in depth. As I mentioned as well, we got a bunch of signings today, with the most notable one being the Montreal Canadiens have signed former Red Wing and Blackhawk Joe Veleno. Theoretically, he's a former Kraken as well, although he never played a game with the jersey on, given the fact that he was traded there and then bought out. But Joe Veleno, after the buyout, became a UFA and is now signing a one-year contract with Montreal, valued at $900,000. It is a one-way deal as well. Good news is if it doesn't work out and they have to put him on waivers, that contract can be fully buried in the minors. Of course, Veleno is Quebec native as well. Of course, had junior hockey exception status to play in the queue. A player I've watched play since he was 15 years old when he debuted for the St. John Sea Dogs. Had some good seasons, was really a strong up-and-coming player there. Like I said, got through there in exceptional status, which is rare. Became the captain of the Sea Dogs. Eventually got traded and then finished out his hockey in junior elsewhere before getting drafted. Of course, rated, I believe it was very end of the first round by the Detroit Red Wings. At one point, when he got exception status, a lot of people thought he might rival for first overall in his draft year. And then, obviously things didn't really materialize for Veleno. Got into the Detroit system and kind of had his moments, but, really struggled to gain consistency with his game. And, of course, he was traded last year to the Blackhawks. Only played a little bit. Didn't, I guess, really find a fit there per se in the short tenure he had. They decided to move him again to the Kraken when he bought out. Now he's a free agent. So we know Montreal is certainly looking for a number 2 center. I don't suspect he's going to turn to be that guy. Considering the contract, like I said, there's really no risk here. It's 1 year, and it can be fully buried if need be, if they need that space for another player. But, a lot of players like to have the opportunity to play near home. Maybe this will benefit him. We'll see. He will have an opportunity to play, and maybe he doesn't become the 2C because I don't see that happening. But maybe everybody else gets elevated, and maybe he can be their 4C or something like that. I mean, it still adds depth to the organization. We don't know what they're going to do yet. They might have to go with Kirby Dach as a 2C. Maybe Newhook gets another shot there, and maybe Evans moves up, and they can use Veleno in the bottom 6. Maybe he plays the wing. Either way, it adds to their depth. It's a low-risk signing, and we'll see if things work out for him with the Habs this year. Some other signings as well. The Columbus Blue Jackets have signed veteran minor leaguer Dyson Mayo. He gets a 1-year, 2-way contract, $775 to NHL, $250 at the American Hockey League level with a $350,000 guaranteed amount, so it's a pretty lucrative 2-way contract. The Chicago Blackhawks have also signed an interesting prospect. He's a 22-year-old undrafted Russian goalie, Stanislav Bereznoy, gets a 2-year entry-level contract as well. So we'll see how things, I'm not sure where he's going to play this year, but Russia's been a goalie factory for a long time. I'm not really sure if this guy's all that good or not. I mean, he's got to be pretty decent, I would suspect, but I don't know a lot about the player, so we'll see how things go for him in Chicago. Detroit signed their first-round pick from the 2025 NHL draft, so 3-year ELC for Carter Bear, so that's a great signing there. And Buffalo has signed kind of a 2-way contract as well with a lucrative AHL contract. Centerman Jake Leschyshyn, formerly of the Golden Knights, Rangers, and I think he played somewhere else as well last year, gets a 1-year, 2-way deal, $775 to NHL, $350 at the American Hockey League level, and a $400K guaranteed amount. So that is a very lucrative AHL contract. Now, a couple details as well on some contract extensions that are being worked on. One we mentioned briefly yesterday. I'll get a little bit more details today. The LA Kings are certainly intrigued and interested to sign Adrian Kempe to an extension. The belief is, according to Dave Pagnotta, the fourthperiod.com, that Kempe is looking for something in the $10 million range on a longer-term extension. So he's been a real good player for them based on the cap going up. That's not surprising to be honest, what he's looking for. There is belief that this could be the final year for Anze Kopitar. So from a cap perspective, they might have a little bit more flexibility after this year anyway. So, if Kopitar does hang him up after this year, he really can't afford to lose Kempe too. I mean, he's been a real good piece there. So I would suspect that the odds are good that they'll get a deal done, but that's reportedly what he's looking for right now. And, of course, another situation involving an extension, which could also impact a trade as well. And we'll talk about Minnesota here with Kirill Kaprizov and Marco Rossi. I know the latest intel from Nick Kypreos in his latest article that he wrote yesterday for his trade bait board also touches on the fact that we know the Marco Rossi situation is still very much up in the air with Minnesota. There's still a major gap in what each side sees for a contract. Obviously, they don't seem to be anywhere close to getting a deal done as of what we had seen yesterday. But now the belief is, according to Kypreos, that there's a pretty good chance that the Rossi situation's not going to get resolved until they have a solution in place or know the full extent of an extension with Kirill Kaprizov, which to a degree does make a lot of sense. Now, of course, they've already engaged in extension discussions with Kaprizov. That has started. The belief is things have gone well to date. The Minnesota Wild have been pretty clear in their comments on this in the recent past, saying that they have no problem making sure they meet his needs for what he wants, and that they don't even have a problem making him one of the, if not the highest paid player in the NHL. So I don't think there's going to be any issue getting a contract done. At least it doesn't seem that way right now. So the belief here with Minnesota, though, is until they get far enough along and get a deal done with Kaprizov, they just don't want to take the chance that talks don't go well with him. They move Rossi. Now they're out two, impactful top six forwards. That would be horrible for the long-term future of the club. So if they get Kaprizov done, that ensures he's sticking around. So that's good. And it also allows them to better manage their future cap by knowing what his number is going to be after the coming season. So it's a little bit of cap management. It's a little bit of roster management. And like I said, as much as, the belief is they'd rather trade Rossi to get a different kind of player. It's not that they don't like him completely. I just think they'd like to change the mix a little bit, if you will. I seem to think that maybe they have issues with his size. I don't really know. It just seems like the intel on Minnesota, as much as he's produced well for them, that they seemed intent that they don't really want to pay a long-term deal for what he's looking for. And I guess we'll have to see. But if they get a deal done with Kaprizov, they also, depending on what Rossi's looking for, and I believe was at least $6-7 million, that they might determine that that's either acceptable or too much based on what their cap situation will look like on a longer-term basis. Now, I know Chris Johnson had mentioned in his latest commentary on Kaprizov that he thinks he could get paid as much or maybe even a little more than Leon Draisaitl. That would be a massive payday for Kaprizov. So, I mean, he, like I said, he temporarily at least could end up being the highest paid player, or at least in the top couple, once this extension is worked out. So, I think he'll get surpassed by other guys that are going to be doing extensions here soon, especially McDavid, but there could be a brief period of time here where he is the NHL's highest paid for once that extension's worked out. But that will greatly impact what happens with Rossi. I think they're still, taking trade calls. They're still having conversations, but until they have that sorted out, they probably don't want to pull the trigger. They're kind of guarding themselves, which is probably smart, to be honest. I know Kypreos' latest intel as well continues to focus on a little bit of Jordan Kyrou, saying that, again, like some of these other NHL insiders, Chris Johnson's mentioned the same thing here in the last week, that these rumors just continue to persist. They're not going away. And the belief is, even though his trade protection is kicked in, the Doug Armstrong, the GM there, would still like to change a bit of the roster, have some turnover, and change things up a bit with the mix that they have there in St. Louis. But, of course, Kyrou's an important piece. The belief is that they don't really want to move them just for the sake of moving them. Like they would want something significant back. So Kypreos says he feels that as much as these conversations continue to be had and his name continues to pop up in the rumor mill, that it's going to take a lot for St. Louis to pull the trigger here, which I guess for some think it's, maybe not high odds of actually taking place. So we'll see. I know we've heard a lot about Montreal and all that persistence since, and I don't know if that's going to really happen. I mean, like I said, I know that they have a lot of interesting assets they could offer. The belief was that any potential conversations that took place before were centered around Mike Matheson being the main roster player going back, with some other, at least two other assets included, which obviously didn't get accepted by the Blues, but it was believed that either that or the Habs didn't want to include them, one of the two, but it was going to be probably at least a first round pick and probably like a Michael Hage or maybe even a Reinbacher. Like there was the 2 or 3 different options that were being discussed from a future standpoint that it seemed like reluctant that Montreal didn't want to put in there. So we'll see. But like I said, according to Kypreos, the rumors are persisting, but he thinks it's going to take a lot to get done, and therefore makes it a little less likely that we actually see something take place. Now, Oilers reporter Bob Stauffer had some intel on the Anaheim Ducks, and this is not the first time I've seen this name pop up, because we did talk about it here in the recent days, but he says that he has sources telling him that the Anaheim Ducks are looking at moving young defenseman Olen Zellweger. Now, again, I'm not sure the exact reason why, but they do have a lot of D there in Anaheim. Maybe they want to have a certain mix. We know teams are looking at what's working for what's winning championships, what's being more successful, and sometimes having too many D that are smaller, or they don't want to have a lot of size in the back end. Like for a while there was a trend towards smaller, more dynamic defensemen getting more opportunities, and now it seems like, I don't say we're completely getting away from that, but a lot of teams are trending more towards the size and the beef more than they were the smaller dynamic skaters. So we'll see. But obviously, Zellweger's not a tiny guy by any means, but he's not huge either. Like he's probably a little bit below average size. Like he's like 5'10", 187. Great skater, though. Pretty good offensively. He's still only 20. He'll be 22 when the season starts. He's still 21 till September. Last year in the NHL, he put up 20 points in 62 games in his first full campaign. He did have a few games in the year before. But, that's not bad for your first year at 21 years old. And his first full American Hockey League season, the season before that, he put up 37 points in 45 games. So that was close to a point per game player as a 20-year-old in the American League. I mean, this kid is good. Like, I remember watching him in junior and stuff. Like, he's a real good, well-trusted defenseman, played in a lot of situations. Like, I don't know. I mean, Anaheim, and Frank Saravalli made mention on the Ducks today. I seen his latest comments on Mason McTavish saying that he's more available now than he ever has been before. Because I know we talked about McTavish just as early as yesterday with the intel still out there that some people keep talking that his name is more available than people think. I know Ducks fans are getting grumpy with this, and I don't blame them. I really don't. I wouldn't want to move this guy. But, to some degree, like there's a lot of stories out there about how he feels and he's frustrated. And I guess over time we'll have to wait and see what's true and what's not. But that was the latest comment from Saravalli on McTavish. And now we get the stuff on Zellweger. So, again, we'll have to see how things play out here in Anaheim. Pat Verbeek's an interesting, tough guy to read. There's no doubt about that. He certainly likes to grind his guys on contract talks as well, which is certainly becoming a trend, we'll say, out there in Anaheim. We also got some big information on the likelihood of not only if, but when Montreal will trade the Carey Price contract. Now, we know that Carey Price isn't going to play NHL games ever again into the future, so certainly they're not trading the player, they're just trading the contract. Of course, right now, they're above the salary cap, which is fine in the offseason anyways. You can be over by 10%. But clearly, like I said before, I've talked about this a couple of times. There was some intel back a couple months ago that there was a good chance this offseason that Price's contract was going to get moved because, for one, yes, you can put them in LTIR, but you don't accrue cap space throughout the season when you're in long-term injury reserve. So it's a lot easier to operate your cap and to accumulate cap space for the deadline to add later in the season if you're not in LTIR. So, like I said, right now with all the additions the Habs have made, I think they're like $5 million over. I mean, Price's contract's over $10 million. So you take that out of the mix right now, and instead of being 5 over, that'd be almost 5 under. So it's a huge difference, right? And then, like I said, they don't have to spend all that. They've got enough players on their roster, and then they have a little bit of wiggle room to go into the season with, which helps with call-ups as well. And then it also helps if you want to add later on. So it makes a ton of sense. Now, the belief here is that we're not going to see it until closer to the start of the NHL season. The belief is, from Chris Johnson, he was talking about this on the SDEPN show that he did with Steve and the guys there, Jesse and Adam, talking about he thinks that in September, because that's when Carey Price's signing bonus for this year is paid, is in September, that once that bonus is paid, that's pretty much didn't say guarantee, but he said that the odds were way higher and pretty highly likely that we're going to see it moved at that point. So that is, before the beginning of the NHL season. And the most likely teams, according to some out there, is the teams that have a ton of cap space, like the San Jose Sharks and the Pittsburgh Penguins being your most likely suspects here. Now, there is some belief out there as well that Ken Hughes may already have what we'd call a gentleman's handshake agreement, if you will, with one of the other GMs to facilitate this trade after that bonus is paid. So obviously some of these teams have a ton of space. They're in a different scenario. Some of these teams are trying to get under the cap, and some of these teams are trying to make sure that they're above the floor. Some teams like the San Jose Sharks already took on a bunch of money to get above the floor, but I know there's probably some guys they'd like to move too. And, this way they can give themselves more flexibility. So between Pittsburgh and San Jose, it could be another team, but I think they're the most likely. But we'll have to wait and see. So Price will likely finish out getting paid from his last bit of his contract from another NHL franchise. But I think that would be a great, smart move by the Canadiens to get out of long-term injury reserve and be able to operate at a point where they can accumulate space throughout the year. So that way, assuming that they're once again in contention for playoffs, which I know a lot of people expect them to be, that they're able to actually go out and make more moves. You have more flexibility, you have more options there to do that. You're not looking for as much, salary retention and all that. Just to me, it just makes their lives a lot easier from a cap management perspective. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.